in very short order after becoming prime minister, Starmer was in NATO. It was at the NATO summit in Washington, sitting with, as we discussed on a previous pod, sitting with the baffled President Biden, wondering who this work experience boy was.
Wondering why Rishi was looking so pale.
Yeah, he's looking a bit. Oh, hey, God love you. Oh, and by the way. So the idea.
That's ridiculous.
The idea. Anyway.
Which idea?
Anyway. Poor bastard. He really is not looking good. And today, Thursday, Starmer is in his full pomp at the at Blenheim Palace with all its Churchillian evocations.
Have you ever been to Blenheim?
Yeah.
It's magnificent.
It is amazing. It's beautiful. And hosting the European political community and having lots of posh bilaterals with Giorgia Meloni and Donald Tusk, and then cosy dinner with Macron tonight, Thursday evening, which we're told they're going to talk about a migration deal, which, is another step towards collaboration with Europe, and that's good.
There was a great photo of the two of them together. Did you see it, Macron and Starmer, where the body language couldn't... I mean, they look like two mates just having a great laugh.
I mean, actually, footnote to which is that one of the things that, and I've heard this from the Labour side, is that one of the things that, in addition to it being as a clangor of all clangors, but Rishi Sunak's decision to get an early bath from the D-Day celebrations gave Starmer, still leader of the opposition, a clear run at going round, and I believe Zelensky's going to be at this gig. Well, we've already seen Starmer. I mean, I have to say of Starmer that he looks like a prime minister.
He has definitely shaken off some of the kind of nervousness that he seemed to demonstrate.
Well, I think
in opposition.
I don't think he really ever wanted to be, and was not a particularly happy or comfortable leader of the opposition. I don't think what he does is he's a doing person.
Yeah, he did an interview on pitch side, I think, with Gary Neville.
Before the final.
Annette Ditter, the German correspondent based in London, tweeted saying, "Look how relaxed he looks. He should do more stuff like this." And she was absolutely right. He looked totally relaxed and at home.
I mean, I think it's true to say that Rishi and Keir are both much happier than they were before polling day, which is an unusual thing to happen. But implicit in your question was that meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, in Milwaukee, the Republican Party hailed its still alive presidential nominee, who was formerly nominated, Donald Trump, with his very strange ear bandage. It really is odd, isn't it?
Besides Evander Holyfield, I've never seen that kind of wound on how one would go about bandaging it. But it was very geometric.
Someone took a photo of some film of him playing golf over the weekend, and he had a very small...
Right.
So it's obviously meant... I mean... how unlike Trump to exaggerate his affliction, but it looks absolutely bloody ridiculous. I mean, it's like a sort of the worst ever Dr. Dre Beats headphones ever, right?
I wonder if there was a lot of speculation that his hearing would be affected.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows, because of course all of the, Jesus never went deaf, did he? And Donald Trump can't either. No one ever said, "Saviour, Did you hear what I said? What's that? Judas, what did you say about 30 pieces of silver?
That's the olive oil.
That's the olive oil. So I don't think, no. I mean, if indeed he did suffer any, tinnitus or whatever, we're never going to hear about it.
No.
So, and meanwhile, he shows his confidence that he's going to win, Trump, by nominating JD Vance, senator from Ohio, as his vice presidential candidate. And Vance, who used to be a never-Trumper, has become the most, frothing at the mouth MAGA man.
Vance once said, Trump will be Hitler. America's Hitler.
Yeah, and he made his name and was a massive bestseller author with this book Hillbilly Elegy, which was all about his communities. And he then went on to say, that Trump had exploited the family he came from, who'd moved from Kentucky to the Appalachians. But he is a man of almost cosmic ambition. And
but also, he is an incredible individual, isn't he?
He is a remarkable individual, and I think that we see in him, and to a lesser extent, but still there, in Vivek Ramaswamy, the next generation, the millennial MAGA people, and they are. I sort of see Donald Trump as the last television president. He's the last of the presidents that. He did use and does use social media, but he's the product of TV, The Apprentice. These people are the product of the digital age, and they're heavily, heavily wired in to the tech moguls like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, and rely on them for huge funding.
So just to explain, Vance's sort of CV is grew up in horrible circumstances,
real poverty
in the Rust Belt, then became a U.S. Marine. He was a marine journalist, wasn't he?
Yeah.
For a number of years. Then he went to Ohio State University, I think, and then Yale as a law school. Did very well there, and then and wrote this book, Hillbilly Elegy. Now, let me tell you an interesting fact. Because I thought, I've never read it, and I haven't seen the movie, so I watched a bit of the movie, and I thought, I wonder if people think it's any good. So the site Rotten Tomatoes.
Yes. And
Rotten Tomatoes gives you a critic score and it gives you an audience score. Critics score
panned it
25%. Audience score 82%.
That's really interesting because,
and I just thought that's the disconnect.
It's a bloody terrible film.
Yeah.
Of actually, to be fair to him, a very good book. I mean, it is a very good book, and it's not the Vance that we now are going to have to get used to at all. It's subtle and reflective and all the rest of it. But you make the point, the only point that matters, which is that they associate him with, the punters associate him with, he's one of them.
Yeah.
And
the establishment don't get him.
They don't. I mean,
don't get Trump anyway. Or
they don't get him either. And he was on stage in Milwaukee last night, Wednesday, giving his acceptance speech of the vice presidential nomination, and he was formidable. I thought. I mean, everything he said I disagreed with. I mean, almost literally every sentence.
Yeah.
But it's different to Trump. It's not quite the sort of peculiar, strange mixture of stand-up comedian and fascist. It's much more the panache of a confident American who's gone through the full social mobility story.
I mean, he's a very urbane, intelligent.
He's
an intellectual.
But he is touched by the craziness that Trump has, which is that he will do anything to not only to help Trump win this time, but to become the nominee in 2028.
Why do you think? Because obviously he's got this back. We know Trump bears grudges like almost as much as Piers Morgan does, which is to say, like eternally. We know that Vance was very open and scathing about him, and so he's had his conversion therapy. And we also know that Trump has a real suspicion of beards, of people with beards, with facial hair. Why do you think Trump has acquiesced?
Well, I think because Vance? The only thing that Trump hates more than someone that hates him is someone that hates him and then grovels. Right. And Vance really grovelled. I mean, he went to Mar-a-Lago serially to say, I got you wrong. And then he said publicly, I love Big Brother. And again and again and again. And he got huge backing from Peter Thiel, the tech guy, but also Trump's endorsement for the senatorial seat in Ohio.
And sorry, that's the bit of his CV I missed out, was that in between
he was a venture capitalist.
He was a venture capitalist with Peter Thiel.
That's what he really is.
Yeah, he's a deal maker, isn't he?
He's a tech bro. I mean, we're moving from the world where television ran politics to the world where about 4 tech titans run the world, which is bloody terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
I mean, the fact that Musk came out for Trump over the weekend, Vance, Peter Thiel's boy, comes in. You can see Silicon Valley just taking ownership of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And wholly owned.
And when you think about how Silicon Valley thrives, i.e. the voluntary giving of our data to these people to use and abuse as they see fit.
God knows.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But also the data advantage that the right-wing Silicon Valley has.
And I mean, imagine Michelle Mon times 1,000,000, because the companies that Musk and Peter Thiel own or run, things like Palantir and SpaceX and the other, these companies are massively involved in all the contracts that the Pentagon and lots of other departments of American government pay for. So not only is there's the obvious point that Musk has now set up a thing where about $50 million a month goes into Trump's coffers for campaigning.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a one step removed super PAC thing, I think, but in practice, $50 million a month. But the real point is that their companies, and Amazon too, the governments of not only America but of all over the world would just simply cease to be able to operate without their assistance.
Well, we saw Musk's influence in small part over the decision to switch on or off Wi-Fi over
Ukraine. And I mean, look at the way that Trump changed his mind over TikTok.
Yeah.
1 minute it was the yellow peril, the big threat of China, right? Then he discovered that one of his biggest donors was one of the biggest investors in TikTok, and suddenly he gave an interview saying, it's really good. Young people love TikTok; they really do. No, I've really come around to it. It's a beautiful thing, and he's got his own account with about 100, as usual, millions and millions of followers, and that was that. And then going back to Labour, I mean, there's been a lot in the papers about the extent to which Labour is cozying up to Trump and Vance, and I don't think we're watching. And I understand the background, which is people have bad memories of Blair and George Bush and Iraq, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what's going on here. Starmer very cleverly called Trump over the weekend to check he was okay, and Trump will remember that. And David Lammy, the new Foreign Secretary, has spent weeks before the election talking to the most horrible men in Washington, including Vance.
Yes.
To try it. Now, the easy thing is to say how horrible, how revolting, how compromised they are by this. But I don't know about you, but I want Starmer and Lammy and others.
Yeah.
If these guys win and if things go sideways, to be able, they'll pick up the phone when they call. If he does try and get out of Ukraine.
So let me read out a podcast from Kevin Maguire,
a post.
A tweet. Yeah,
a tweet.
Which I think crystallises what you've just described.
Yeah.
Kevin, who's the political editor, the associate editor of the Daily Mail.
And a fine man.
Yeah, a great guy. I preferred the David Lammy, who called Trump a, quotes, woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, end quotes, to the one now pretending that he and JD Vance are just another couple of US politicians to do business with.
Well, he probably does prefer it that, and I suppose that's a reasonable thing to say. But come on, Kevin. I mean, it's quite likely that Trump and Vance are going to be in the White House on January the 20th next year. And it's quite likely that they're going to try and pull out of Ukraine or pull the aid away. And it's quite likely that they're going to threaten NATO. And it's quite likely that they're going to pull out of the climate agreements. And it's almost certain that they're going to raise trade tariffs, which will have massive implications for the economy. Now, one could choose the option of calling them Hitler.
Yeah.
Or one could be a government and keep your friends close but your enemies closer.
Yes.
There's absolutely no doubt. I mean, Starmer and Lammy aren't like Trump and Vance, but I like the idea that they can call them up and try, and it might not work,
and influence
them because that's government.
I think that's right, and I think that's the grown-up pragmatism that we've been asking for all this time, not the posturing and the dogma. It's easy to call someone a sociopath, but if the reality is, and this might be contentious and we've had a lot of pushback from readers and listeners saying that, you mustn't write Biden off and all of that. Well, with respect, I think
we must.
We must, because, and we had one particular email saying, how could you two, quotes, a pair of fucking idiots, talking about Biden as being currently the most dangerous man in the States because he won't stand aside. Of course he's not the blah, blah, blah. Well, I think you missed the point, listener. And the point is that if Donald Trump wins, he is then the most powerful man in the world, whether we like it or not.
Yes.
And if we want to have some influence in the world, we have to be able to make a call. One of
the greatest presidents of all time, John F. Kennedy, said that we must deal with the world as it is, not as we would like it to be. And I think that is a very good principle of government.
That's what David Lammy himself said.
And Lammy himself said it this morning on the Today programme.
I didn't realise he'd plagiarised it from JFK.
Well, I think it's kind of just a common sense, isn't it? But it sounded good when JFK said it.
One thing that I didn't think sounded good when David Lammy spoke this morning was when he was talking about his connection to JD Vance, and they obviously get on well.
Yeah.
But then he said we're
both from
blah blah
backgrounds,
blah, and then he said, and we're both Christians.
Yeah.
And I felt, mate, don't fucking bring religion into this, right? It's bad enough over there.
That was one affinity too many.
I mean, honestly, I couldn't care less that
and
you're
also
both Christians.
And also, I mean, the whereas Vance's Christianity led him, well, two things. One is that he opposes abortion with no exceptions,
including rape and incest,
right? Secondly, he made it. I think it was a joke, but it was totally unfunny. He made a joke, I think last week, in which he said that he and a friend had been wondering when a Islamist state would get nuclear weapons. And they realised, of course, that now that Labour was in power, it was the UK. Ho, right? And this is playing to the sort of Islamophobic, conservative, evangelical Christian base. He's a Catholic, actually, but no, I don't. I think keep religion out of it, and I think they'll probably at some point, if Trump and Vance are elected in November, it will be necessary for both Starmer and Lammy to make absolutely 100% clear that they are not giving a blank check. So, for example, they're not obliged to give Trump the state visit he will crave, right? And this is a clear and present danger, Trump pursues this appalling deportation of immigrants, 12 million immigrants without documents policy, which will lead to horrible disorder, and the
scenes
will be horrible. Prime Minister Starmer at that point is richly entitled to say, well, we spoke when we were both in opposition, and I called you, when you were the victim of an assassination attempt. But I have to tell you, the world thinks very poorly of what you're doing.
Yeah,
that's different.
Yeah,
and I think neither Starmer nor Lammy are giving a blank check.
No, and
but they are dealing with the world as it is.
As it is, and it is so frustrating to see. I hope they don't bother reading it, but the commentators, the usual suspects, who pretend that the world is not as it is. And that all of these choices are either simple or, if you don't make a choice or you engage with somebody, you are as evil and as complicit in whatever's happening.
No, I mean,
all the bollocks that was spoken about Lammy visiting Israel and being photographed with Netanyahu.
But he then went on and
condemned the whole thing.
Yes.
And called for a ceasefire and all of this. But it is condemned by hard left nutcases as being complicit in genocide. Fuck off.
Lammy actually is really quite passionate about the Palestinian cause and about the need for a ceasefire. And, would we rather have a foreign secretary that didn't go to see Netanyahu and tell him in terms, this is the British government's position, and then stand up and say, what you just said?
Which is what Corbyn would have done.
Yeah.
That's what the Corbyn government would have done.
We won't go.
We won't go. It's abhorrent. They're criminals. We call for the Hague to prosecute them. All right, fine. Fine words doesn't help.
Because we have reached a point in politics where there are not it's a dwindling number on the left, I'm pleased to say, or the progressive side, but for whom virtue signalling matters more than action.
Yeah.
And I think that this government, in as much as it can influence Israel, and that's a limited amount, has set its face very clearly to, expediting a ceasefire as soon as possible. I can well imagine when Lammy gets legal advice through, him taking a different position to David Cameron on arming Israel.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
He's waiting on that advice now.
He's waiting on it now, but I mean, which is frustrating for people. But it is the protocol. But what I'm trying to say is that it is just wrong, as some of the left do, to assume that because Lammy goes into the swamp of MAGA or whatever, he is a MAGA.
Yeah.
I mean, come on,
No, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
But people are making a very good living on their YouTube channels from this kind of
nonsense. Meanwhile, back in the real world, there is an ongoing war between populism and centrism, in which a lot of times centrist governments are going to have to deal with populist governments.
But as we discussed the other day on the podcast, the circularity of extreme politics meeting at the back end is clear.
I mean, there is a lot that unites Nigel Farage and Owen Jones, which is that neither of them really wants to take responsibility for doing anything. They just want a presence and a personality and to be always right. And to be uncompromisingly hostile and scathing to any alternative opinions. Yeah, I mean, this government is radically different from the one that preceded it. Is it really the case that they'd prefer? What would they prefer? I don't understand.
No, I don't know. Well, anyway,
we'll
end on our ignorance as usual.
Yes.
Okay.
Well-meant ignorance.
It's the
best kind,
ignorance. So thank you for listening, folks. Hope we weren't ranting too much, or I wasn't anyway. Matthew's always much more considered than I am.
I like a rant.
Get in any questions for Sunday's Q&A episode to 2mats@tnepublishing.com. That's the number 2, MATTS @tnepublishing.com. Or you can leave a question for us on YouTube. We've got a thriving YouTube channel, and that's exactly what @rock ROKK said, love the discourse, you've earned a subscription. This is the kind of show I dream of guesting on. Looking forward to the next one. Okay.
Well, keep subscribing, keep commenting, you never know.
Yeah. You can get that episode and many more when you hit follow on your podcast app. Please remember our subscription offer. Go to theneweuropean.co.uk/2mats and you can subscribe to The New European from as little as £1 a week if you think what we do is worthwhile. I heartily commend you to do that, and we'll give you a £25 voucher to spend at our shop for free, and you can get a Bollocks to Brexit passport cover amongst other great merch. Thanks as ever to producers Matt Hill and Ollie Peart at Rethink Audio, and until Sunday,
it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from him.
Goodbye.